Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cover One Roundup here live every Monday on the Cover One YouTube channel or subsequently wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host Kyle Silagyi, joined not this and every week by Rob Quinn. Rob Quinn is on assignment, as you can tell. This is not Rob Quinn here with me today. It is Covers One writer David Fox joining me not only for the first time on the Cover One Roundup, but for his first live podcast. David, what's going on?
I'm doing good, Kyle. I mean, whenever you can come off a weekend that involves squishing all the fish for the second time in 8 weeks, it's pretty nice. Especially when that also involves, having them only score 11 points in 2 games. It's pretty solid.
That's pretty impressive. Roman writes, what did you do with Rob, Kyle? I'll never tell, Roman, and you'll never find out. Maybe next week. But yes, Rob should be back next week. Rob just had some stuff come up. Unfortunately, could not be on this week's show, but again, should be back next week. But again, I mean, David's here. He'll be he'll fill in quite well, I'm sure of it. So, as David alluded to, we are going to talk about the Buffalo Bills' Week 8 win over the Miami Dolphins. As he said, some fish were squished, or some mammals were, whatever rhymes with mammals that, alludes to defeating them. Yes, another not necessarily dominating win, not as dominant as their Week 2 win over the Dolphins, but still a pretty convincing win, especially in the second half. The offense came to life. We'll get into that, our takeaways from the game. What else are we going to talk about? What went right? What went wrong? We're going to do a little brief Jags preview. Sorry, I'm reading the comments.
Oh, I am too. It's great.
Faux means false, so this is the fake Rob Quinn.
We are not here to confirm or deny that.
And then also, we will end with hot takes, everyone's favorite segment. Everyone loves them. David, you better bring the heat because, I mean, according to the comments, Rob has better hot takes than I do. I don't necessarily agree with that. You don't have to, I'd say you should side with me over the comments.
Saying that Rob has better hot takes than you kind of feels like a hot take in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I'm sure the comments would say they have better hot takes than I do too. So, but I doubt that. So before we get into any of this football talk, Cover One in general and this podcast are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. This is the first time I have to do the fantasy read, but I have to step up when my number's been called. So Underdog Fantasy is a relatively new fantasy sports app that has daily fantasy sports, player props and best ball drafts, mid-season best ball drafts, and you can get $25 after a free $25 after a $25 deposit using promo code COVER1. Again, that is a free $25 after using promo code COVER1 and also depositing $25. So there we go. Wasn't the best. Wasn't the best ad read, but it was.
It's
your
first time. You did well.
Thank you. Again, just next man up. That's the attitude we take here on the Cover One Roundup. Next man up attitude. And sometimes you're going to get a Phillip Gaines in 2018 performance. Next man up after not that Vontae Davis was great. Sometimes the next man up's not going to be all that great. But what are you going to do, right? You're gonna move forward. We're gonna move on, and we're gonna have a good rest of the show. So. We're going to start off here with the Roundup, everyone's favorite segment in which we break down news, rumors, and brief storylines surrounding the Buffalo Bills. So really the only thing that we were going to talk about in the Roundup today was the fact that the NFL trade deadline is tomorrow. We were going to talk about whether or not the Bills, or we expected them to make any sort of moves, but some news did come up today in Sean McDermott's press conference. He said that Dawson Knox, of course, just had hand surgery, I think last week, is now considered day-to-day. I think there's probably an outside shot that he plays against the Jags now that he's listed as day-to-day. But don't hold your breath. And also, John Feliciano is now listed, or he has a calf strain listed as week-to-week. So who knows what his week 9 status is going to be. So, David, just now that you see John Feliciano is on the injury report with the calf strain, how do you feel about this Bills offensive line moving into week 9?
It's a very tricky situation because what you have right now, I mean, they had to switch their offensive line. We'll get into this a little bit later. They had to switch their offensive line quite a bit because of Spencer Brown's back injury that he had last week in practice. So they moved Darrell Williams back out to right tackle. They put Feliciano from left guard to right guard, and then they put in Ike Butker at left guard. And that seemed to work okay-ish. I mean, all of these guys have played before at those respective positions, and they're all like fine. But then when you have Feliciano go down with a calf strain, that's one of those things that if you really rush him back too early, that's just going to keep lingering on for the rest of the season. But then again, we don't have, at least as far as I know, an update on Spencer Brown's status for the moment.
Not that I have seen.
Yeah, so this could get a little bit hairy kind of quickly, because with this trade deadline, I mean, I think there were a number of us, including myself, who thought maybe the Bills, might be shopping around Cody Ford. Former second round pick, has some good length and measurables, but has not come close to living up to any sort of expectations here in Buffalo. But could be an interesting project for another team to take on. But now when you have multiple injuries to your offensive line, it's like, well, crap. Like, we kind of have to keep this guy. If there were any conversations being had about Cody Ford, I'm guessing they're probably all tabled for now.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think that, we'll just transition into trade deadline talk here. The NFL trade deadline is tomorrow at 4 p.m., and there really haven't been that many rumors surrounding the Buffalo Bills, which could probably be expected given how strong this team is and given how Brandon Beane values his draft picks. You really wouldn't expect him to go and make a huge midseason move, of the magnitude of a Von Miller per se. You just really wouldn't expect that given the Bills cap situation and, how he values assets. I didn't foresee a big move coming this, at least this season, mid-season. And the only name that was believable, I guess, or potentially being shopped, and I don't even know if there was any truth behind it. It was more fan generated than anything, but was Cody Ford, just because he has fallen out of favor when he is on the field, hasn't been all that impressive, was solid in the first preseason game, hasn't been great since. So with Cody Ford, like you said, though, David, anything, if there even was anything brewing there, not anymore with John Feliciano out, and you don't know how long he's going to be out. Whether he's back in 2 weeks or in however many weeks, you just cannot. And when you are a team that is as good as the Bills, you want to be deep. And, regardless of if Cody Ford is good or not, he is a player who has started a lot of games for the Bills at a variety of positions. So that's at least not it's a desirable depth piece to have. So with the uncertainty at the offensive guard position right now with Feliciano's injury, I do think they have to hold on to Ford here for at least the rest of this season.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about, trading for an offensive lineman, but there's not that many genuinely good offensive linemen that are going to be traded because there's so few of them in the NFL nowadays, or just at any given point in time. But, even if that were the case, they did bring someone in. It takes a long time to get someone just transitioned right in to a new team. And that's always sort of the case with any midseason trade. It's going to take a while to transition, and it's good to have someone like Ford who at least knows what he's supposed to be doing, in theory. And even if he can't necessarily always execute that,
right?
That's a whole other situation. It seems like the Bills and the Bills really do value continuity pretty much across the board, whether it's coaching or their players or at any point. So that I seriously doubt that there's going to be any sort of movement on the offensive line in terms of a trade. They might try to pick someone up off someone's practice squad or something, but again, that has nothing to do with a trade or a trade deadline.
John Herring writes, Ford is done, had enough chances. This I will agree with. I don't think Ford should be willingly thrust into the starting lineup again at any time soon. But I mean, given the current circumstances, like, would I rather the team have another 6th round draft pick, or would I rather they have someone who can play guard if they need to as they continue down the season here? Like, I personally would rather the continuity, would rather the player at this point, see if I can move him in the offseason, because I think he still has another year left on his rookie deal. So, at this point, I personally would not be in any rush to move Cody Ford, but I'm not Brandon Beane, right? I've never pretended to be Brandon Beane except on Madden a lot. So, but that's irrelevant. So, moving on here past the NFL trade deadline, we don't expect any moves to be made. Though the Von Miller trade was crazy today.
So a 2nd or 3rd round pick. The Rams don't care about draft picks. They don't. They don't care about draft picks.
And aren't the Broncos like keeping the majority of his salary?
Yeah, they're paying like $9 million of that.
That
$9 million
sense.
out of $9.7 million. The Broncos. Listen, if someone gave me a 2nd and a 3rd round pick for next year and I got paid $9 million, fine, all right, whatever, I guess. Still weird though.
G Seals writes in chat. Kyle slept at Holiday Inn. I have in the past, not today, but I'm not currently at a Holiday Inn. But in the past, yes, I have some Holiday Inns. That's a great transition. The Buffalo Bills defeated the Miami Dolphins this week by a score of 26-11. The offense started out slow, which people are talking about in the chat. It was a slow start offensively. We'll get into first half offense versus second half offense. But just David, before we get into like specific takeaways, what went right, what went wrong, etc., just what are your overarching thoughts of the game?
I was getting pretty frustrated. I always go to a Bills backers bar here in Bonita Springs with my parents, and like any sports bar, there's always way too many people who know nothing about this game that think they know everything about this game. So I try to tune that out. But even I was getting pretty frustrated in that first half, just like, oh my God, this Dolphins team is so bad. They have lost 7 straight games, 2 of which in the last 2 weeks have been to the Jags, who didn't win for a year and a half, and the Falcons, who I have no idea what they are, but they're not a good team.
No,
and
they
the
are
Dolphins,
a team.
they are an NFL team that exists. That's what I know about the Atlanta Falcons in 2021. And then the Dolphins' only win this year came against the Patriots somehow in week 1 in New England too. And they could have easily lost that game too. This could easily be an 0-8 team. This could be like a 3-5 team, but like they're closer to an 0-8 team than a 3-5 team, honestly. I mean, they just look like they're kind of day walking. And so when you have that coming in after the Bills come off their bye week, it was like, all right, easy pickings, get a nice multi-score lead at halftime. Oh, it's tied at 3. Great. So I was pretty frustrated, but they did make a lot of really good adjustments at halftime. Which is how they were able to score 23 points in the second half, which is always great. I mean, 23 points in a single half is what you want. It's what you expect out of an offense that has as many weapons as the Bills do. So it was really good for them to adjust and not just sort of take it on the chin and kind of whimper into the night. I mean, if you look at across the AFC, I think our fellow Cover One buddy Greg Thompson brought this up on Twitter. The Bengals lost to the Jets yesterday. They let Mike White throw for 405 passing yards, which, by the way, is apparently the most passing yards a Jets quarterback has had since 2000 with Vinny Testaverde, which
like
is
300 games.
Very depressing stat if you're a Jets fan, but absolutely hilarious to everyone else. So there, I mean, weird stuff happens in the NFL, and there's times when you, as a very clearly superior team, are just gonna not play at the level you should be playing against a clearly inferior team. But when that happens, are you just gonna roll over and die and give away a game or something like the Bengals did? Well, the Bills didn't do that against a division opponent that they have owned pretty much since Sean McDermott has got there.
Yeah.
Their only loss has been when Josh Allen was a rookie.
Mm-hmm. On a Charles Clay drop pass in the end zone.
Yeah. Couldn't come back for the ball, could you?
Right. That was like one of the first games where it was like, oh, Josh Allen like could be good. Like this, he's more than athlete. He's Josh Allen, which we saw in the second half of yesterday's game. So before we get into the first half offense and second half offense, because we both have, I'm sure, a lot of things to say about the adjustments made and stuff like that, I want to focus on my first takeaway, and that is someone who was a benefactor of those adjustments, and that was Cole Beasley. He had what was objectively and statistically his best game of the season, 10 receptions for 110 yards. I don't think he got in the end zone, but it was reassuring because Beasley's a guy that a lot of people have talked about this year. Like, what is his role in this offense? Like, why has his production, why has his usage gone down? And maybe that can be attributed to Dawson Knox's emergence. I mean, obviously very different roles, but just, you know, in terms of where the ball is going, Dawson Knox has gotten his target share has gone up this year, which, I mean, the targets have got to be taken away from someone else. But then yesterday, with Dawson Knox out, Cole Beasley gets back in the offense. He's a focal point and delivers with 10 receptions for 110 yards. 8 of those receptions came in the second half after a lot of those adjustments took effect. So where the Bills offense really strived yesterday, where it really succeeded, especially, you know, from the second quarter on, was around the line of scrimmage and then in the short to intermediate game. We have a super chat from John DeMarchi. Thank you so much, John. Take a run at Patrick Peterson, trade for Brandon Sheriff. Rams went for it all. Bills should, especially with Henry out. We will talk about this later on.
Interesting.
We'll get back to that. Thank you again, John.
Yes, thank you, John.
So, yes, where the Bills offense really strived, where it excelled, was in the short to intermediate game around the line of scrimmage, and then in the short to intermediate to, I guess, long game. Not the long game, really, you know, just 10 to 15 yards over the middle of the field. And Cole Beasley really was maybe the main star in both of those areas of the game, right? With Cole Beasley, I don't want to get too into it because we're going to get, you know, into it later, but they tried to get the run going early, couldn't get the run going early, and they were really committed to it, and it didn't work. So what they did instead, like starting in the second quarter, is they tried to simulate the run. They tried to get the ball to shifty guys on the boundary just behind one or two, you know, receivers to block. So they tried to pick up, you know, short yardage that way. And that's how Beasley really got a lot of his yards, picked up or had gains of 6, 3, 4, and 10 in the second half. And then, when defenses have to start respecting near the line of the scrimmage, near the line of scrimmage, that opened more stuff up deeper down the field. And Beasley again excelled there, had gains of 15, 17, 14, and 20. He was just Allen's go-to guy really throughout the entire game when he needed yardage, whether it be, on third down. He was targeted 4 times on third down, targeted 7 times in and long situations. Cole Beasley was the guy who Allen really looked towards throughout this entire game, which again, it's really, I don't know if reassuring is the word, but it's just good to see that, like, there were questions about Cole Beasley, his role in this offense, and just to see, like, oh no, he's still a good player. Like, it isn't his fault that he hasn't been used. He just hasn't been used.
With Beasley, I mean, his best 2 games of the season have come pretty much in the last 2 games. He had a great game against Washington too, but I mean, he was really active against the Titans, and in the second half, I mean, he was basically, he couldn't cover him in the second half against the Dolphins. He was that type of player, and that's sort of what we've grown to expect with Beasley. It's why they brought him in. It's, he had a great connection with Allen his first 2 years, and that connection is obviously still there. But like you said, I mean, when you have other weapons emerge, like Dawson Knox becoming an actual tight end, I mean, he's somebody who goes over the middle, that like Cole Beasley does a lot. You have Emmanuel Sanders, who, is probably more of that boundary type of guy, even though they do like to use him in the slot. He's somebody that has also gotten a lot of targets. But I think that's also why you have as many receivers in this on this team as you do, because there will be a game where Cole Beasley gets 10 catches for 110 yards, and then the next week, Emmanuel Sanders is going to have 7 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. This is the beauty of this whole offense. You have the weapons where someone's going to be open at some point. They got to focus on someone or the other. Someone's going to be open, and I think that's what we're seeing more now. And like you said, something that was truly frustrating in that first half was just like first down run, first down run, first down run. It's not working. The Dolphins defense is kind of like many other Belichick style defenses are designed to take away the run. Don't know why you're so committed to the first down run, but at least they got away from it. And like you said, they started throwing more short and intermediate. I think the Dolphins came out with a lot more zone looks than they were expecting initially. I mean, they talked about leading up to that game, like the Dolphins are super physical, man-to-man type of team. They play their cover one, they play the cover zero blitz. So that's what they were expecting. I think they came out with a little more zone than they were expecting. And that kind of was like, oh, well, crap, what do we do now? Then they ended up figuring it out. So I think that Cole Beasley is definitely he's still who he is. And it's worth noting that he has played much better and has gotten more targets since he deactivated his Twitter account. Cole Beasley can get off Twitter, and so can you.
I will say, I was at the game yesterday. I think, I still can't confirm, but I think they're chanting bees.
We're pretty sure.
I wouldn't put money on it. I wouldn't bet on it on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Cover1. But I think they're chanting bees. I do believe that's what they're saying. So yes, just to put a bow on that, Cole Beasley is still a player. He's still a good player. Somebody brought it up here in chat earlier. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I cannot. But whoever wrote it, thank you. It was just basically saying like defenses have been, kind of scheming to cover him, and then yesterday you saw Diggs and Sanders kind of, at least I guess Beasley said in his press conference that it was Diggs and Sanders who were schemed to be covered. So Beasley, kind of was the benefactor of that.
And you could tell with the way the Bills decided to use Diggs. I mean, I think Diggs had 4 targets, maybe 5 targets, and 3 of them were basically the same screen type of
exactly simulated run.
Yeah, and then the one touchdown that he had.
So yes, we'll get into the offensive game plan and how it shifted in a couple of moments here. So actually, we might get into that now. David, what is your first takeaway?
So sort of what we already talked about a little bit. I mean, first half offense versus the second half offense. I mean, first half it was we're gonna run on first down, and it doesn't matter if we're only getting 1 or 2 yards. We're just gonna keep doing it. And I mean, they really just looked so out of sorts the entire first half. And it was really frustrating to watch because you're just like, God, can we just put this game away early so I can watch something more interesting? Can we put this game away so I can watch Mike White? Like that's what we wanted, right? So
just what everyone thought they were going to say when they woke up on Sunday. I need to watch the Mike White game. Mike
White against a Lou Anarumo defense. That's what 2021 NFL season needed. The first half was really frustrating. You could tell just how frustrated Josh Allen was getting, especially after that the fourth down where Jalen Phillips is in the neutral zone. They snap the ball because he's in the neutral zone. That's what they're supposed to do. Clearly not trying to run a play. And not only does that not get called, but then they call him for intentional grounding, which, I mean, it is. It just, looks that much worse when you don't call a very obvious offsides. And Allen was just so mad after that. And that was right before, I think right before the half had ended. But it was a very different offense coming out of the second half. And you could tell Allen just had his frustrations and just all right, we just need to freaking do something.
Mm-hmm.
So then the Dolphins get the ball back first, 3 and out. Bills get the ball back, 3 and out. Dolphins get another 3 and out, and it's just like, all right, this game's gonna go exactly like this for the rest of the second half. And then the Bills went on a 13-play drive. Cole Beasley doing what he did, and then finding Gabe Davis for the first touchdown. Yeah. And at that point, it was like, okay, let's relax a little bit. So it was impressive. Like you said, they decided to go more of that quick passing game to try and not just jam it up the middle against that front, and instead just spreading it and using that as an extension of the run game rather than just jamming it down the middle. And something sort of related to this and what we talked about with the offensive line, I think having Spencer Brown out and all the shuffling that they did, it's a little weird that they decided to go run heavy first, with Spencer Brown being the type of like great run blocker that he is, and Darrell Williams, who played pretty well at guard in the last couple weeks doing that. It just seems a little weird that they decided to go run first as their approach in this game. And I understand that the Dolphins have a lot of DBs and that they're very good. Like Byron Jones is a good corner. Xavier Howard is a good corner. Nick Needham is even a good nickel. But, that's also where your strengths are. You have the receivers to go against this. Just gotta be willing to take a couple of shots, and maybe they were trying to play a little more conservative, to not give the Dolphins certain chances, to try, because Xavier Howard can take the ball away at any point, and Byron Jones can create a lot of trouble with any receiver. But I think their ultimate approach ended up working in the Dolphins' favor, who are like, yeah, freaking run on first down if you want. Like, we'll stop that, and then we'll stop you when you're in 3rd and long. So it was good that they ended up adjusting. It was really good that Allen did not let the frustrations of the first half spill into the second half. And he kind of talked about that after the game. Like, he doesn't play well frustrated. He has to, he's learned more from the great Phil Mickelson, who he dressed up as yesterday, to just, keep moving forward. And it makes sense, honestly. If there was ever anyone from any sport that could talk about, playing through frustration, it's a golfer. Like, I don't know how anyone plays that sport and doesn't break every club in their bag. But yeah, it was good to see the adjustments that needed to be made were made, and that they didn't just like stubbornly keep going against a brick wall.
Yeah, it was, especially rewatching it just today, because as I said, I was at the game yesterday. I was with my friend who got, I'll just say, he had one too many soda pops in the parking lot.
He had some fun beverages.
Yes, and he slept on my lap throughout the entire game. So I could not really focus. I couldn't react to what was going on. So I had to rewatch the game today, and with watching them just again with the commitment to the run in the first quarter was really annoying, especially knowing how the game ends. I was like, why are you trying this? Like, there's other avenues that you probably should be able, or you should be trying to use to beat this. And I think the first drive really is a good microcosm here. They came out the first drive, 2 straight handoffs, got nothing, and then Allen picked up like 20 on a scramble, and then they threw on first down, handed it off on 2nd and 10, and then they ran it up the middle with Allen on 3rd down. Yeah, but I think that got called back. It was like, what is going on?
Yeah, that 3rd and long QB power, I was like, oh my, what's the thought process here? What are we doing?
Get it. I didn't personally understand it, especially not on rewatch. I didn't understand what was going on. But then in the second quarter, they did start to implement some of the things that we talked about, right? The getting the ball out wide quickly to extend the run game. They started to implement that, and it was working in some respects, but like it just wasn't as working as effectively as it did in the second half, at least. Like I think Eric tweeted about it earlier. There was a play, it was like back to back. I think he got the ball to Beasley twice in a row, or to Diggs and then to Beasley again, just out wide quickly on faux screen passes. Not, that's not your last name. It's spelled like it, but Fox screen passes.
There you go.
And then and then I think they handed it off again, overcommitment to the run, handed it off to Moss on 3rd and short. Didn't get it. So they had the right idea in the second quarter. They switched to the idea that would ultimately work in the second quarter. Just the execution wasn't fully there. But then execution did pick up in the second half, and I'll get into it later. But yes, the first quarter, at least, game plan wasn't good. This commitment to the run when you have an MVP caliber quarterback, just like, I don't get it.
Yeah, it was very weird, and especially with all the shuffling of the offense line, it really just didn't make any sense to me.
It was odd, but so I'm going to move into my second takeaway now. We're switching to the defensive side of the ball, which generally speaking had a pretty good day. Again, limiting the Dolphins to 11 points. And I'm going to focus on Ed Oliver here. Ed Oliver had a very good game. Leslie Frazier complimented Ed Oliver today, saying that he's finally starting to put it all together, looking good in pass rush, looking good as a run defender. So he had 2 tackles and 3 total pressures, according to PFF. But like, this is kind of the thing with defensive linemen always, right? It's like their impact really doesn't show up on the stat sheet, not even really the advanced stat sheet. And I don't want to say that Ed Oliver was like a game wrecker by any stretch of the imagination. Like he wasn't, the pressure wasn't necessarily consistent. Like he wasn't winning every rep, but you can't really expect any player to win every rep. But Ed Oliver at times was very noticeable. He came up with 2 incredible run stuffs. He had one, again, really shown. He was effective as a run defender, had a really nice, he blew up a Salvin Ahmed run. Is that how you pronounce that? In the first quarter. Thank you, David. Then he combined with Edmonds and Hyde for a stop in the second quarter. And then again, had a few nice pass rushing moves, nice pass rushing moves, just a few nice pass rushing reps, had a sack taken away by a Jerry Hughes offside call. And then I think it was the first play of the second quarter. He got pressure on Tua immediately. It was largely because he was untouched. Just people forgot he was there, but also just like the burst and the first step to like make them regret immediately. Like just didn't have an eye on him for a millisecond, and Ed Oliver was by him. So he has always looked like, there's some people who think that hasn't lived up to that, 9th overall pick in the draft billing, which I'd listen to the argument. I don't know if I subscribe to it, but I would listen to it. But I thought this game, he was very impactful.
Yeah, he was really good. He definitely stood out through most of that game. And that's what you want, and it's what you expect when you're playing an offensive line as genuinely bad and messed up as the Dolphins. Like the Bills have their issues on the offensive line right now, which is largely at the moment injury related. The Dolphins just suck. Like the Dolphins offensive line is just awful.
Very bad.
They have put a ton of resources, particularly draft picks, into that offensive line. They have gotten nothing out of that. I mean, it's pretty bad. And I mean, that's what you want to see from Ed Oliver, is just that really quick, twitchy movement that gets that interior pressure. I think that's so key to creating a good pass rush, which has been very hot and cold throughout the year for the Bills. I think, with Latule, not this is about Latule, but Latule's emergence coming back after last year, I mean, he's been really good as a pass rusher himself, and Oliver's kind of been hot and cold. If those two can work together, I think that really helps guys like Hughes and Addison, who had a sack yesterday as well. But Ed Oliver really, really played well, and I think I'm hoping that these last couple of games, he was okay against Tennessee. He was really good against Houston. Again, another poverty franchise. I'm hoping these last couple of games, and especially coming off the bye week, he said, coming off the bye week, we should feel good. And weather's getting cold. It's football weather. And So I'm hoping this all just keeps moving forward, keeps snowballing. He'll get that first sack this year, hopefully, eventually, and maybe even next week against the Jags. But yeah, I was really happy to see Ed Oliver playing as well as he did.
This was probably his best performance, at least in recent memory, against a team that's not from Texas. Because he was good against Houston a couple years ago, really good against Dallas. Those are the two standout games. But now he has a good game against a Florida team, which some could argue is just like crazy Texas. So maybe it counts. I
live in Florida. I can confirm that.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Oh, I can only have Florida-based co-hosts on this show.
Clearly, I was just gonna say, you swap one co-host in Florida for another. I'm not quite so tall, dark, and handsome as Rob is, but my doctor says I'll get there.
He is like 6'4". I think I asked him on the show a couple of weeks ago. I was like, are you 6'4"?
No, I'm like 5'7", dude. What are you talking
about? Well, no. Look, I wanted to be the tallest one on the Cover One Roundup. I wanted to have something, right? I was like, he has the football knowledge. He has, he's the good person on the show. Let me be the tallest one. Can't have that. So, at least today.
There you go.
I have the tallest one today. So moving on, what is your second takeaway here from the show?
I've kind of already talked about it a little bit. The offensive line shuffling. So here's what's really interesting. So Spencer Brown gets hurt. He's been starting at right tackle. When they decided to put Spencer Brown at right tackle, they moved Darrell Williams down to right guard. They kept Dawkins at left tackle, obviously. Mitch Morse is still at center. He's been playing well this year. And then Feliciano is still playing at left guard. He's been starting at left guard since week 1. Okay. But then when you have Spencer Brown go down, okay, so they shifted Darrell Williams back to right tackle. They moved Feliciano from left guard to right guard. And then they decided to start Ike Butker. And what that all says to me is Cody Ford is just not in their game plans anymore. If they can absolutely help it, Cody Ford is not playing for this team. And ordinary, like we talked about with the trade deadline, that would normally mean that, he's on the trading block. I mean, we kind of saw that a couple of years ago with Zay Jones, right? Right before he got traded, he just wasn't getting many touches. And then he had one game where he got a couple of targets and then off to the Raiders he went. But with Ford, I mean, they didn't want to start him. They didn't play him at all until Feliciano got hurt. And now that Feliciano has an injury that's going to make him week to week, now you have to play Cody Ford because you truly, at this point, just don't have any other options, which is very telling about where Cody Ford is as a player. So I'm concerned about the offensive line and all the shuffling that is going on. That being said, let's talk about some of the good things about the offensive line from this year as a whole. I mean, Deion Dawkins, the whole offensive line had such a bad start against the Steelers. Deion Dawkins has pretty much returned to form from what I've seen. He looks really good. Mitch Morse is so freaking good. I mean, I understand that there was all this talk. Well, maybe they should cut him. Maybe they'll trade him. I always thought that was nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Never made a lick of sense to me because this dude is so freaking good and he is such a good center. He's so helpful with Allen's helping set protections. He is really good on these pin pull moves. I mean, his first year here in 2019, it felt like most of Singletary's big runs as a rookie came when they were pulling Mitch Morse in front of him, and he is so athletic and can get out there and really physical and be able to do that. So I think that's really good. Darrell Williams, I was really iffy about him moving to guard. He actually has looked really comfortable there. He's really good getting to the second level from that position because he's a pretty good athlete. And speaking of great athletes, Spencer Brown, I mean, a rookie third-round pick from Northern Iowa. He's a great run blocker. He's got that nasty killer mentality. He has ways to go in pass protection, which is about what you'd expect from pretty much any rookie. But it's really promising to see a lot of these guys playing at a decent level. And I think when healthy, this is a good offensive line. Not a great offensive line, but a good offensive line. And that's all you need with Allen and the receivers that they have. But with all the injuries and the constant shuffling now, it's tricky. And it's a good thing that they're playing a team like Jacksonville next week. But then the week after that, they're playing Indianapolis. And that might end up being a bit of an issue given that they have to force Buckner. I know that's 2 weeks away, and it's way too far to be talking about Indianapolis right now, but that's what's on my radar.
I thought they had the Jets after the Jags because I saw a.
Am I wrong?
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong.
I just saw a Kyle Brandt tweet, and it was like they have a bye month. They have Miami, the Jags, and the Jets. Yes, they have the Jags and the Jets, and then Indianapolis. So
okay.
But like
to your point, producer doing good work.
To your point, though, like with the O-line reshuffling, I think it was the Houston game where they initially started their reshuffling, where that might have been the first game where they started Spencer Brown out on at right tackle, moved Darrell Williams inside,
which makes sense. You give him an easy shot to try and ease his way into the game.
Right, exactly. And the Jags have fun pieces defensively. They have fun pass rushers, but this is a game where, like, generally speaking, like, you can probably take a few risks. You can kind of reshuffle the offensive line and see what works in this game, because as Kyle Brandt said, it's a bye month.
Bye month.
Like,
honestly.
I like Jacksonville, but I love the city of Jacksonville. I remember a couple weeks ago on our season prediction podcast, I said that the Jaguars have the best fans because they yell Duval. And someone took me seriously and commented on a podcast like weeks later. And he was like, this guy's a clown because he said Jacksonville has the best fans. I was like, what? Like,
listen, man. Some people can't be helped. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I loved it. I think initially I was like, hey, when Bills fans yell Erie, you let me know. And then the Bills can be in the best fans in the league discussion. So
you need to start that next game you go to. Just yell Erie.
I would have, again, if I didn't have someone, bogging me down.
But
Rob's
apparently going to this Jags game. Maybe if they start yelling Duval, he just yells Erie right back.
I'll ask him.
We got to get on this.
I'll ask him to counteract. So now moving on to our second segment, everyone's favorite. It's what went right and what went wrong. This is the segment in which we discuss what went right and what went wrong. So I'm going to kick it off here with red zone offense. Went right. Surprisingly, I tweeted this yesterday. Red zone more like bread zone because the Bills were good in the red zone. They entered the game with an underwhelming touchdown percentage in the red zone. I think entering week 7, I think last week, I just looked at my notes from last week. They had made the most trips to the red zone, but they had like the 7th worst touchdown percentage, scoring a touchdown on only 55.2% of their trips to the red zone. Not all that great. Eric made a great breakdown of maybe why this is, and they were calling a lot of RPOs in the red zone, which at times kind of took the ball out of Allen's hands, which is not where you want the ball in the red zone. And so yesterday, they kept the ball in Allen's hands in the red zone, and that paid off. I don't think they got into the red zone until the second half, but once they did, they got there 4 times, ended up with 3 touchdowns and 1 field goal. So that's a pretty good percentage. Allen had 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdowns. The play calling in the red zone, here's how it broke down. It could have, some could have been RPOs, but this is how it ultimately went. 7 total passes, 4 runs, 2 quarterback runs. One of those passes was from Beasley, so that kind of inflates the pass
which
numbers.
I didn't hate. That was not a bad.
I liked it. I liked the call.
It was well covered by the Dolphins,
right? But just in general, right? The idea of keeping the ball in Allen's hands in the red zone, right? Keeping the ball in your best player's hands near the end zone, that'll probably lead to good things. And it happened yesterday. Again, 3 touchdowns on 4 trips. That's what you expected this offense to do. And I was never overly concerned about the red zone proficiency because the offense in general was doing very well. It was just kind of outside the red zone. The red zone was the one kind of like weird anomaly of, the shortcomings of the offense. And they were so good in the red zone last year. So I kind of expected the red zone offense to regress, or I guess progress to the mean, to kind of get back to where it should be. And it looks like it's finally back on track.
Yeah, I mean, not much more to say other than that. I mean, it was weird that they were so bad in the red zone to start the year, like especially like even in like 2019, 2020 especially. I mean, they were just good on offense, period. But even in 2019, when they were very up and down, like they were still good in the red zone when they got there because Josh Allen is who he is. So it was kind of weird that they just started off so slow, but they seem to have kind of figured out what to do now there. And then, like you said, give it to Josh Allen. He is who he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, red zone offense. It's back, baby. Guaranteed. All right. What is your what went right to you? There's already people talking in the chat here about how great this guy was. So I'll let you kick
look,
off here.
John, reading my mind. What a man. What a man. All right. So what went right? I have said this on Twitter so many times. I'm going to keep saying this so many times until everyone acknowledges this. There are 3 kickers in the NFL that are automatic: Justin Tucker, Harrison Butker, and Tyler freaking Bass. When they decided to go for a 57-yard field goal to start the game, I said, he's got it. And he got it. It was a little closer than I thought it was going to be, but he got it. A 57-yard field goal is great. Like that, the fact that you can do that is, and have confidence in your kicker to do that is like, that's why you spend a 6th-round pick on a kicker. He is truly, it's so nice to have a kicker where you're not praying every time he goes to make a kick. I mean, whether it's from 30, 40, 50, an extra point, whatever it is, this dude's got it. And I know last year when he first started, everyone was freaking out. Oh my God, he shanked this field goal. He shanked that field goal. He's not going to get it. Why did we spend a 6th-round pick on him? And it turns out he's great, just like they knew, just like we should know. I mean, it really you got big trust Bass.
Everyone says, right? Like Stephon Diggs says, like, oh, he's one of the top 2 swaggiest kickers in the league, and he's not 2. Like, why is he not Big Trust Bass?
This is another thing. We gotta start writing down all these different branding ideas. Like, we gotta get the Erie chant going. We gotta get Big Trust Bass.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Look, we can't talk about Tyler Bass without talking about Matt Haack and his holding skills, because he's done well as a holder, right? There was an interesting conversation in the Slack earlier, in the Cover One Premium Slack, which I will plug later. But with just kind of how one of the reasons why the team chose to move on from Cody Bojorquez was that he wasn't a great holder, right? So you bring in Matt Haack, regardless of how you feel about him as a punter. He's been good as a holder, and that's kind of benefiting Tyler Bass here. And like you said, automatic. Bass-o-matic, I think, is what an announcer said last year. Bass-o-matic, not good. But Michael writes, the punting is sucked. The punting at times is sucked. I agree. Yeah. But he's been a good holder, right? I think Matt Haack had a 19-yard punt yesterday.
He did. He had a shank early on, which was like kind of a big problem for him in Miami when he was there. But that was pretty early on, and he came back and also kicked a couple of good punts. They weren't great punts, right? But they were. That's another thing with like special teams in general and kickers. They're very strange people. They're very like focused mentally, and if something kind of breaks there, it can be very shaky for the rest of the game. And the fact that he shanked that one punt and punted pretty well after that, I think is actually pretty impressive.
Spin writes, Boho is the better punter, Haack is the better holder. I would agree. And also, like, when you have the Bills offense that's as good as it is, you hypothetically don't need the guy with the booming leg, right? That's just not hypothetically, you don't even want to use your punter. So like the Bills don't really need a guy with a booming leg all that often, hopefully. So Boho again, probably the better punter, but I'm not really all that upset with Matt Hawk. So what went? Did I already talk about what went right? I think I did. I did. So what went wrong? We've already talked about this really, but it just the first quarter or the first half in general, offensive play calling, the overcommitment to the run. But then, like I said, they started to adjust in the second quarter. Got quick balls out to Diggs, Beasley, and Davis. They hit Moss on a screen. So the indication of what their offensive game plan was going to progress into was there early, and there at least in the second half, and then we saw, or in the second quarter, and then in the second half, it really became their bread and butter, opened up more opportunities elsewhere, in the passing game, and then voila, 26 points is what they win with. But just again, like we talked about earlier, Stephon Diggs, 5 receptions for 40 yards. Davis, 4 receptions for 29 yards. Moss, 6 receptions, all at the line of scrimmage. So that really was their game plan, was to extend the run game, get the ball to their playmakers at the line of scrimmage, behind blockers, hypothetically, and let them do the rest of the work. And that really did pay off. And that's why the offense got going once they decommitted to the run and found that production in other ways, similar production in other ways. So at least like I did see some, not hatred, but I guess backlash for Dable yesterday with his commitment to the run. But I think the adjustments were good.
Yeah. I mean, we've already talked about this, but the frustration was just like there's nothing wrong with running the ball. Despite what the nerds would have you say, there's nothing wrong with running the ball, but you have to do it efficiently if you're going to commit to it. If you're just banging your head into a wall for 1 or 2 yards every time, we're going to be a little frustrated at that. But again, it's really hard. And I don't think I really had an appreciation for like coaching and game planning and how difficult it is to adjust a game plan in the middle of a game until my roommate started coaching. It's hard, and Dayball does deserve credit for making the right adjustments and not just like, oh, we just got to execute better. We got to make the blocks. Make the adjustment. Do something that works, and they found something that worked in the second half.
John DeMarchi again with the super chat. Thank you. Coming in hot. Thank you so much. Right. So can we talk about Edmonds and Milano? Edmonds was an animal all day, and Milano's hit changed momentum. Also, Kumro on the Mckenzie fumble. Huge. David will get into the Mckenzie fumble in a few minutes here. But yeah, especially live, right? Like Edmonds, everyone talks about how he's, 23 in his 4th season, which is just crazy, right? But you don't realize how big of a person he is. He's a large man, kind of. I thought he was effective yesterday. Came with a few good plays, filled a few run gaps. Taron Johnson had a nice game as well, though there was one play when I was rewatching today. Miami handed the ball off in their own, near their own end zone. And then the guy just kind of ran by Taron Johnson. I don't know if Taron Johnson got pushed away or if Taron Johnson just didn't know he had the ball and ran by him. But that was funny. Maybe I'll tweet that later because it was quite funny. I don't know what the situation was. But other than that, Taron Johnson was good. And yes, Matt Milano, that huge hit, which, people are saying that it did change the momentum, kind of did bring life back to that Bills defense and the Bills in general. So, David, if you don't have anything to say about Edmonds and Milano, you can get into what went wrong. Or you can talk about both.
I'll do a quick one on Edmonds and Milano. Edmonds played really well. There was really only one play that I thought where I think it was either Gaskin or Ahmed broke his tackle initially, and that was on a drive where the Dolphins were getting a lot of yards after contact, but that was pretty much the only drive they were able to do that on. But outside of that, Edmonds played a really good game, and I mentioned this in my recap yesterday. Milano's hit really changed. You could just see the sideline. They got so fired up after that, and it was exactly what they needed. Milano, I mean, we know who he is. He's a stud. So what went wrong? We're gonna stick with special teams, and we're gonna talk. It's time to have a conversation about Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah McKenzie is a very fun player. He is very capable. He's a fun person. He's a great personality. When he gets chances, he can be a good returner. And we know that. We've seen him do that. Also, I feel like I'm holding my breath every time the ball is in the air and I see him underneath it. And I'm like, oh my God, please don't mess this up. Just catch the freaking ball.
Catch the ball.
And that muff yesterday, I mean, my God, that close. My fingers are very close for those of you who are listening to this.
Right, the audio podcast.
With the audio. I mean, it was very close to like really shifting momentum where the Bills would have had to start playing from behind and allowed the Dolphins to do even more crazy stuff defensively. So there needs to be a real conversation about like Isaiah Mckenzie and how viable he is as a returner coming like in the future, even in the near future. I mean, this is kind of why you drafted Marquez Stevenson in the 4th round, and we also haven't heard anything about Marquez Stevenson.
I was going to bring him up. Yeah.
I think that he is obviously capable. We saw that great punt return he had against the Bears.
Yeah.
But it's also like, why he's not even like heard of. Like I don't know what to make of that at this point. Maybe they're just like, we're not going to worry about that. But I mean, if it wasn't for touchdown Jesus, this time saving a touchdown, it would have been a very different game yesterday. And Mckenzie, I mean, we knew that was going to be an issue coming into the year. Was losing somebody like Andre Roberts, who was just such a solid, steady, good Pro Bowl type of punt returner and kick returner, was going to be tough. But it looked like Mckenzie was going to be fine. But stuff like that, when you see stuff like that happen, you're just like, oh my God, if this is a different game, it gets worse.
We're having a much different conversation.
Yeah.
Justin writes, don't bash Mckenzie. He's greatly improved from years past. That he has. And he's an electric returner better than Roberts. And then G Seals kind of makes a point here. The point that I was going to make, feast or famine, no in between. I don't know if I would say it's like, an all or nothing type thing with him, but like with Mckenzie, at least compared to Roberts, right? It was like Isaiah Mckenzie has the higher upside as a returner, right? He has he can break off any return for a touchdown. He has that type of speed, that type of player. He's an electric returner potentially. But again, you just don't know if he's going to catch the punt. Like, as you said, you're kind of praying every time he's back there. That's one of the reasons why he got cut from Denver initially, was that he wasn't a reliable fielder. He wasn't, a reliable returner, at least in terms of catching the ball. Again, the upside's there. He's really developed as an offensive player. And again, as a returner, I like Isaiah Mckenzie. Even if he's not the returner, I think he has a spot on this roster, certainly. But I'll just say I was genuinely shocked that we did not hear any link between the Bills and Andre Roberts when he got cut 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I was shocked when he just signed with wherever he signed with. I don't even remember.
Ended up with the Chargers, who have needed something good to happen to their special teams for the last 20 years. So good for them.
Yeah, I was just like, wow. I expected at least
also good for Andre Roberts for getting out of the dumpster fire of Houston. So
right. Yeah, Brandon Cooks can't do that, unfortunately. Regardless of the tweets. But like with Roberts, right, it was just his thing was consistency. It was he's not gonna really mess up, though. Lone Wolf writes, Roberts muffed a couple of punts last year too. But like with Mckenzie, it's like it's not every game. Like he tweeted at Brad Gelber yesterday. And I can bring this up. Brad Gelber was just at my Halloween party, but like he tweeted at Brad. Right? Yeah, no. No, he tweeted yesterday. Brad tweeted something along the lines of like he's he has one of those a game, and he was like, no, if I have one of those a game, I'll send you $2,000 or something like that. Weird conversation. I'm not really doing it justice, but it was something along the lines of Isaiah Mckenzie saying he'll give Brad money if he does that every game. So it's not an every game thing, but it is a concern, right? It's to the point where we're like, oh, I'm concerned about him as a punt returner, at least, not concerned about the upside, but the consistency.
Yeah. And it wasn't just that one return from yesterday. I mean, lest we forget, one of the only points that Washington scored earlier in the year came off of a bizarre gaff when the ball just kind of got caught in the wind in that game, dropped right in front of him, and he didn't do anything. He just kind of stood there like, Now, in fairness to Mckenzie, he did have it was either one or two opportunities on punt returns yesterday where he very smartly just let it roll and it hit a touchback, which like that's kind of an underrated, like not something that gets talked about enough when we talk about special teams and returns, especially punt returning. It's just like knowing when to just let that go and let it hit the end zone. And he does deserve at least a quick shout out for that. So good for him on that at least. But again, that sort of thing is kind of marginal in the grand scheme of things, whereas a turnover is a turnover. And especially one that could have just as easily been a touchdown right off the bat, that's a problem. And they got to figure out what they're planning to do with that, if anything.
Right. I don't know if they are going to. But again, it's something to monitor to see if this is something that Mckenzie continues to not necessarily struggle with, but if it's something that continues to happen. So we are an hour deep. So we are going to make this brief Jacksonville Jaguars preview, as I wrote down, even more brief than I anticipated. The Jaguars aren't very good. I think is I know, right? Shocking. Jacksonville Jaguars aren't good. But with look, they have a bunch of turmoil off the field, have for a long time, especially this year with the whole Urban Meyer stuff, which resulted in some funny Halloween costumes. I will say he made Halloween a lot more entertaining this year, so thank you for that, Urban. But with they have fun pieces. I think I said this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. They have fun pieces. They're a fun Madden team, not a good football team. Yeah. Laviska Shenault is my favorite football player, maybe ever, certainly in the league right now, as I wrote down on the whiteboard back here. Things that Kyle loves. 1, Laviska Shenault. 2, the Buffalo Bills, okay? So my Laviska Shenault loyalty is stronger than my loyalty to that of the Buffalo Bills. So sorry. If I had my say, this would be the Laviska Shenault roundup. I would just be rounding up Laviska Shenault stuff.
Of course.
Every week, which there wouldn't be much to talk about, but I would listen to it. I know if someone else made the show, I would listen to it. So Laviska Shenault, hypothetically a good player, just doesn't really get the target share that he needs to be a good player. Again, could be a super fun piece in that offense, just doesn't really get the targets. And then Trevor Lawrence has had an up and down year. And right now, the injury bug kind of bit them. DJ Shark's out for the year. James Robinson left the game yesterday with an injury. I don't know if he'll be back next week. I think he's day-to-day and questionable for the game. So, look, they're not a great team as it is, especially now kind of depleted. I don't want to say I'm looking past the Jags, but this isn't a game that Buffalo should struggle with, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. Someone in the chat was talking trap game. G Seals trap game. I disagree. I feel like if the Bills were going to have a trap game, I feel like it would have been the Dolphins yesterday. That had trap game written all over it, especially when there were all sorts of trap games in the NFL yesterday. But the Bills overcame that. The Jags just kind of look lifeless and defeated, and Urban Meyer just looks like he really needs some really strong antidepressants to get through each game. I mean, it looks like every time on the sideline, his head in between his knees. He's just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? It's pretty brutal watching the Jaguars try and play football right now, and I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. Laviska Shenault's a good player. Marvin Jones has actually been pretty good for them this year, low key, and that might be an interesting matchup that they might try to take advantage of. I feel like they could use him the way the Dolphins used Devontae Parker yesterday, because they're both kind of similar, both jump ball type of guys. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, this team is just so bad. They're just so bad. They don't have the guys that they need to hang around with anyone, honestly, and they certainly don't have the coaching to try and help with that either. So the Bills are better pretty much across the board. The Jags do have the other Josh Allen in the NFL, who is actually a very good player. If you want to watch, a good young pass rusher. Josh Allen is definitely up there. So that might, with the offensive line kind of shuffling around for the Bills, that might be an issue, but I doubt it's going to be enough to where that alone is going to keep the Jags in the game long enough for them to actually do something against a very, very good Bills defense. So, should be a fun game in Jacksonville. Shout out to Rob.
Down there in Duval.
Right.
John DeMarchi again. Thank you so much, John. I learned from the Jean-Claude Van Damme classic Time Cop, sarcasm, that the same matter cannot occupy the same space. If Jags, Josh Allen, sacks... Jeez. No, I haven't thought about that. That's a storyline.
Rob is going to be... That's going to be our Nexus event.
No, John, you're not overdoing it at all. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Thank you. But, like, no, this is a storyline. Like, Rob is doing the TikTok storylines now. If Rob doesn't use, like, the laws of physics in Time Cop in this preview, what is he doing? Are they both just going to disappear?
I'm telling you, this is their Nexus event, if that happens.
Have you ever seen Time Cop?
No, I have not.
I have seen. I went on a Van Damme kick one day. It was legitimately just one day. I watched Time Cop and Bloodsport. Didn't like Time Cop. Thought Time Cop wasn't that good. Thought Bloodsport, kind of kicked ass. I thought Bloodsport was pretty good, but this is now the Van Damme round. Yes, the Jaguars are not a good team. I too don't think that this is necessarily a trap game. But I mean, if they lose, I'll say next week that it was a trap game. But
if they lose this game, I really won't know what to say. This is such a bad team. I mean, I understand they beat the Dolphins last week, but they also just got annihilated by the Geno Smith Seahawks, who that defense is bad, and Geno Smith a good backup, but you should not have any Geno Smith team scoring 31 points on you.
No.
Period.
We got some Bloodsport love in the chat. Wow. Look at that. 3 Bloodsport comments. Wow. Maybe there is a market for a Van Damme roundup. I'll talk to Eric. I'll see what I can get going for next week. All right, David, before we get out of here, because I think this is already the longest roundup we've ever had. What is your hot take? Because you're a guest, right? I'll open up I'm sure you'll be on future episodes, but just to open it up here a bit, this hot take doesn't necessarily have to be about the Jags games. What is just your hot take regarding the Bills 2021 season?
My hot take is that Josh Allen, who will be a guest in the third quarter of the Manning broadcast, will be the best guest that they've had the entire season and will be the best guest they've had the entire season.
They had Pat McAfee on. Wow. That'll be, hey.
Don't doubt my quarterback.
That's my quarterback. I'll tune into that, certainly. We're getting dangerously close to Monday Night Football kickoff, so we got to go here. My hot take is that Laviska Shenault catches 15 passes, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's the only offense the Jags have. It's going to be a great day to be Kyle, right? Because Laviska Shenault's going to ball out. He's going to warrant being on my fantasy team. Yes. Huge day for Laviska Shenault as the Bills win 58-14. So it's going to be an incredible, electric game. Thank you all in the chat for watching, for interacting. This was a great, a great back and forth with the chat tonight. So again, thank you each and every one of you who tuned in, who participated. Thank you, David, for joining me this week, for filling in for Rob, who is out. I'm sure he's working hard on his assignment, whatever he's doing. So what else? Make sure to follow Cover One on Twitter, at Cover One, on Instagram, on TikTok, on all social medias. We're all over the place now. Make sure to subscribe to Cover One Premium if you want to. If you enjoyed interacting with us here today, you can interact with us consistently using Cover One Premium. You can get access to the Cover One Premium Slack. We're always in there, always talking to people. Sometimes, which again, I don't know why you just heard me talk for an hour. I don't know why you'd be like, yes, more. more interaction with Kyle. But if you want to, Cover One Premium, you also get access to Cover One Premium content on the website, which is always good. So yes, make ssure to follow. Oh geez, working hard on. Oh geez. Oh geez.
We're gonna end it on that.
That's the only place this one could have been. So yes, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, use promo code COVER1. Do all that good stuff that I'm sure I hit everything at this point. I'm just rambling. So thank you guys for watching. We will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.